In today's show, we're talking with Orlando Sanchez about who should stay and who should go ahead for the Blazers free agents this summer. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts. Make it your first listen, coming at you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. Make it your first listen each one of those days. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. Today, a very fun episode, joined by friend of the program, returning guest, beloved returning guest, some might say, Orlando Sanchez from KGW right here in Portland. Orlando, thanks for joining the program. How you doing?
All is well. The madness has begun. Thanks for having me on, my man.
No prob. We're recording this, just a peek behind the curtain. We're recording this during the Duke Oral Roberts game, and I was ready to really puff my chest out, but then my beloved Golden Eagles have been struggling a little bit. I and the scoreboard here on the other screen, they're struggling a little bit. So, yeah, we're not going to mention it.
Fair enough, man. Thought we might throw your phone there.
Fun time of year, though. I do love the mornings of Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, of just like 9:15 on the West Coast. Basketball starts. It's on all day long. It is. It's really special. And like, I'm not a big college basketball guy. This is kind of when I tune in. So I watch whatever 8.5 hours of basketball today. I got no problem with it.
Same, dude. Total casual. And when it comes around this time of the year, I'll lock in, check it out. And I mean, so far, it hasn't disappointed. You know, we made it a few hours in, and you could see the March Madness tweets going out that, you know, only 1% of the brackets are still perfect and only like 5 games have been played. It's insanity. But I was standing up in the office here at the KGW studios in Portland, and every time they can just hear me trying to, you know, hold it all in because of last second shot, holding it in. So pretty fun right now.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for my man Kihei Clark at Virginia, who played 118 college basketball games, and his last one ended real poorly. Sorry, Kihei. Somebody's got to lose. Shout out to the Furman Paladins, a great win from the pride of South Carolina. Let's talk a little Trailblazers. Today's show, we're going to talk basically. The Blazers have more than just the 5 free agents we're going to talk about, because shout out to Ryan Arcidiacono, but they have free agents this summer that they have to make a decision on. Most of what's going to happen this summer, like in the big world for the Blazers, are trades. You can't really trade free agents. That's not how it works. There's some sign and trade magic you can do, but for the most part, this is just a decision of bring them back or let them go. So I want to run some names by you. We'll run through the 5 big ones and talk about what the Blazers should do with each of them. Let's start with Cameron Reddish. Is Cam Reddish entering restricted free agency? The Blazers can make him a restricted free agent with the ability to match any offer. They'll have his bird rights. They can go over the cap. Basically, if they want him, he's theirs. Orlando, should they keep Cameron Reddish?
As soon as you said we were going to play this game, I'm like, I'm trying to be the good cop, not the bad cop. I'm hoping Mike will be the bad cop in all of these scenarios. But I think right now Cam Reddish is in a tryout. I think that's a large reason why we're seeing him get so much playing time and why he's getting so much run right now. And so I'm very curious to see how the next couple of weeks play out. Does he trend upwards? Does he trend downwards? If we're just basing it off of last game and what we thought we were going to get from him against the Knicks, that's not a good sign of what's to come for Cam Reddish. But, you know, he fits the profile, the type of player that you want, and you're just hoping that he can develop into that dude that the Blazers need, especially coming off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you kind of touched on my thoughts on as well. It's like the good Cam Reddish is really special. And then against the Knicks, he scores 2 points in 19 minutes and goes 1 for 6 on a night where they just needed his offense. They really needed him to be better there. With no Jerami Grant, he's coming off the bench. They've entrusted him a lot of ball handling duties, in part because nobody else on the team can dribble. So that works out for him. There's just a limited number of dudes who can like dribble up the court and then make a couple decisions. They're light on that skill set. And I think there's been nights where it's like, yeah, 6'8" with a handle, can shoot a little bit, length to be good on defense. You see it. And then there's nights like against the Knicks where I think Blazer fans were like, he's about to score. In fact, I got an email from a friend. From a listener. I'm not going to call him out, but I got an email from a listener who was like, calling it now, dude. He's scoring 20. And I was like, all right.
It's the perfect
didn't email
story.
Him back. I didn't. Yeah,
that's how it's supposed to be written, and it just
100%
didn't turn out that way at all.
Yeah. So I think where I land, I wonder what you do, is like in a bench role, I'm probably comfortable bringing Cam Reddish back. If it ends up being where he's a larger role for him, I would probably be more uncomfortable.
I think that's the perfect way to put it, because that's pretty much how I feel. I want him to develop and be one of those guys that plays spot minutes that gives your starters a blow, but I don't want him, at least the player he is at this point, to be in that starting rotation right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's 23. He obviously, players get better. It's just, if they're trying to be really good, Cam Reddish is a bench guy. I also don't think it's like that big of a put down to be like, yeah, this dude should play 15 minutes off the bench on a good team. Like that's a pretty good role to have. Certainly a role he would have liked to have in New York and didn't. And so there's an opportunity for him to have it. I think Cam has a big chance over these last 12, 13 games to show that he can be consistently productive. You know, it's small sample size, whatever, but if he has more good games than bad games in the last 12, I think it only helps his case. The other guy I want to ask you about,
and so
go ahead.
Far, his attitude too, man. I mean, just his willingness to learn from the vets on this team, specifically Dame. And he talked all about that when he first got here. So, I mean, there's a lot of likable characteristics that make you believe like this dude could develop here.
Absolutely. The other guy I want to ask you about is the other newcomer. Matisse Thybulle came over from the Sixers. He also, same deal, entering restricted free agency. The Blazers will have his bird rights, which means they can go over the salary cap to sign him. He'll be a restricted free agent. They can match any offer if they want him on the team. He's theirs. There's not a lot of gymnastics you have to do to keep him. What have been your impressions of Matisse? And do you think he's a returner or should be a returner next season?
Dude, sign him yesterday.
All right.
He is a dog. I love his game. Really excited to see him play. And I mean, he checks the boxes. You need somebody to play defense at a level that he does. When you see him out there, I mean, even when the game was out of hand, he was going hard. I mean, there's like 2 minutes left in the game and he's diving for the ball, going after steals. Like, what's not to like, at least on that end, and at a position where the Blazers just need defense.
Yeah.
Somebody to complement Dame in that regard. So yes, keep this dude. I've been really impressed with him. He's lived up to the hype defensively, and the shots are falling from him right now. You know, the three ball has not been a deterrent. So that's good.
Yeah, he's 23 of 55 from three in 13 games for the Blazers. That's 41.8%. He made 21 threes in 49 games for the Sixers. It's just a totally different thing. I will say I'll be the bad cop, or whatever. I think my concern with him is he is effective. He doesn't need the ball to be impactful, but the other team knows that, and they don't guard him. And I think there is a point where, you know, he's shooting really well from three, and there's reason to believe that he could continue to shoot something like above league average from three, because he basically only gets wide open ones. But they really don't guard him. Like if you watch particularly when he's on the opposite side of the ball, when he's on the weak side, his man is in the paint. And sometimes even early on, like his first game, he hit 4 threes against the Lakers. They weren't even guarding him on the strong side corner. They were like, shoot it. Like shoot it. We want you. You're the guy we want you to shoot. Like we watch Dame and Ant. Like we know we're going to, if we get to choose, we choose you every time down the court. I do worry that there is a breaking point with that. That said, like Portland at this point needs to find impactful players who play on the defensive side of the ball. And Matisse Thybulle is undeniably that. He's undeniably that. I would say I'm not as high on him as you are, but I am still in favor of him being back on the team next season, because he's a skill set you need. And like, the idea of this team is that if they, they're going to make some trades or make some moves, and they're going to have Damian Lillard and Jerami Grant and some additions, blah, 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 blah. And like, who knows, the other folks are going to be on the team, but like, they're going to have some additions around that kind of, is that even a core of two gentlemen, at least two gentlemen plus. And Matisse Thybulle fits that plan. Like, he could play with those guys. And the idea is that you'll upgrade enough that Matisse Thybulle isn't like on the court in the final 3 minutes on every single night. And that he can be, a part of a lot of a lot of your best lineups can include Matisse, but not every best lineup must include Matisse. And I think that's the best version of this team. But what if, like, you said sign him yesterday. How quickly did you make that? How quickly did you make that determination? How quickly were you on board?
Pretty quick. I mean, your argument is valid, and I think that's what a lot of 76ers fans have said and have been frustrated about, to the point where they couldn't play him because you have to at least be a threat. And that's been an issue for the Trailblazers too, where they say, all right, we're going to put 2-3 guys at Dame, and somebody's got to. We'll let anybody else beat you on the court. And so
Al-Farouq Aminu, right? It's like, it has shades of that, except that Matisse is a much better defender for sure.
And he's knocking him down. So, I mean, I know in the NBA world, like, stuff evens out. It will. It is what it is. But if he can continue to knock down open shots, they'll be just fine with him. But yeah, I mean, it didn't take long for me to be like, nah, this is a dude. He fits what we're looking for, what we need defensively on a team that is so smelly defensively.
Yeah, they can have some struggles. Okay, in the second segment, I want to ask you about a couple big guys, potential returners to the team this year along the Blazers front line. We're talking Drew Eubanks, the Shaq of Troutdale, and Justice Winslow, a legend from 2022, a player you remember from a previous calendar year. But before we do that, I want to tell my listeners about a little bit of hardware we're giving out. And we're giving it out to Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard. That's right. Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard played one game this week, but he was electric, brilliantly fierce, fiercely elegant, stunningly powerful, some would say. And that's why he's the Nissan Most Electric Player of the Week, brought to you by the all-new, all-electric Nissan Ariya, the 2023 EV for folks who love to drive. Listen, Dame only played one game. He only played one game, and they lost. But he had 38 points, 7 boards, 7 assists. He hit 8 3-pointers. He was perfectly the duality of fierceness and elegance. Beautiful but strong, the perfect SUV crossover, some might say, much like the 2023 Nissan Ariya, which packs pin-to-your-seat power and premium intelligence all in one EV, the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya, the EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right. Still chatting here with Orlando Sanchez of KGW. We're still talking about who should stay and who should go with the Blazers' biggest free agents this summer. What do you think about Drew Eubanks? Should Drew Eubanks be back and part of the plan next year? He came back, he signed $1 million 10 days, and then he came back, signed a 1-year deal, 1-year minimum to return. Should Drew Eubanks be part of the plan next season?
Oh man, he's been so much fun to follow and to see him earn his job, that it's hard to root against him. It just depends on like we mentioned with Reddish, how they're going to use Drew. Like if he's your third guy, I think that would be fantastic for him. And it's not going to cost much in the grand scheme of things to keep him. Seems like he's pretty happy here to have family and all of that good stuff around him. I love how hard he plays. He brings so much energy to the court that it's nice to have a dude like that in spots. So if he's not your starting center, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I think that's about right for where I'm at with Drew Eubanks. Like, if you needed him to play 14 minutes a night, he'd give you really good 14 minutes. When that gets extended to 20, some of his limitations show up. He doesn't have a lot of offensive range. He's not like a crazy rim protector. He's not an elite rebounder. Like he plays hard as heck. He could block some shots, but he's not a great rim deterrent. Sometimes he gets a little block happy and chases a block when he maybe shouldn't. He has some skills, but when you play him 20 minutes, they show up. When you play him 30 minutes, like when he was the starting center for 6 weeks, it's like, yeah, I don't think this dude's a starting center in the NBA, which isn't really his fault. Like, you don't sign a 1-year minimum contract to be like, I should start in this league. Everybody wants to start. Everybody wants to play. I'm not suggesting that, but it's like he's a guy who should be playing less than half the game. And when he does play less than half the game, you get better minutes out of him. I kind of feel like they did him somewhat of a disservice this year and giving him a big role, because I feel like people are down on him because of the ask that he's had.
Dude, you nailed it. That was perfect. That was exactly what I was going to say, is it was kind of unfair to him to be in that position, and forced to be like the guy, and everyone saying, well, what's up, Drew? Why aren't you covering Joel Embiid or whoever it is? That's not fair to him. Like, that's not the player that he is, and that's not what his role is supposed to be. But in spots, and he's just from an entertainment value when I'm watching, he's a lot of fun. And so it would be great to have a player like him that, you see come off the bench every now and then and contribute.
Also, for like selfish media reasons, incredible interview. Great interview. He's really good.
That always matters in our world.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good. Like, the thing is, this is a funny media thing. It's like, when a guy's it's like in the world, you might say a good talker is kind of the language in our world. I'm not as much in the world anymore, but I'm coming back, baby. But in our world, it's like a good talker. If you got a good talker who doesn't play, it's real tough for media types. It's like, well, I can't even really go. Like, I can't go and ask him. Like, it'd be inappropriate if after the game I'm like, well, let's get Drew. He played 4 minutes, or like, let's get Drew. He hasn't played in 2 weeks. Like, it's like it would be rude to his colleagues to be like, we'll get Drew's opinion here. So it's like, I want him to come back, and then I want him to have a role just enough so the people can still hear from the Shack of Troutdale, because he's a really compelling, he's a fun and compelling interview. And I think he's whenever I've talked to him, I'm like, easy to root for this guy, even if he's like should be a third string center on an NBA team.
Make it happen, Mike. Make it happen. We need those sound bites.
I know. Listen, you live in the 15-second soundbite world. That's perfect. It's honestly like Drew on the exact same contract can be a third. Like, it's like if you pay him another NBA minimum on 1-year deal, he could be a third string center. Like, you're not going to overextend, literally bring him back at the exact same manner in which you did this season, except like have a more responsible team around him, like build the roster with a little more interest in competing, and you will and you'll get more out of Drew. I think that's for sure. Another guy we haven't seen in a while, I want to ask you about, Justise Winslow. He got hurt like the week of Christmas, and he has not played. And he's still listed as out for Friday's game. You're listening to Friday, March 17th episode. The Blazers play the Boston Celtics this evening, if you're listening to it when this comes out. If you're listening to it a little bit later, Justise Winslow didn't play on Friday. He's out. Like, he's still not out. I think there's a very realistic chance he does not play again this year, based on how it's gone. He was kind of good when he played, with some flaws. Let's assume not like misses half the season, but with the health risk that you understand, are you interested in another year of Justise Winslow with the Trailblazers?
I mean, first and foremost, I got to say, I think the man deserves his flowers a little bit. I don't know if we really appreciated what his game entails and what he meant to this particular team. Because when he went down, I just thought of it as a footnote, like a line that, hey, he got hurt. He'll be back. But from a playmaking standpoint, this team really could have used him. And I started to think about him as a player in that light the longer that he's been out. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I didn't think it was going to be as serious as it has been with him.
Yeah.
And maybe that was just a tone. I don't know, but that kind of surprised me to see that he's been out this long, and that kind of gives me concerns going forward, even with what you said as a preface to this scenario in trying to keep him.
Yeah, I mean, part of his deal is that he's had trouble staying on the court. Like that's just a part of his. It's unfortunately it's followed him his whole NBA career. It stinks. Like no one deserves that struggle, but it's been part of his whole NBA career is that he's had this trouble. The way he left the court in OKC, it was like, ooh, that looks bad, but it's also an ankle sprain. So it's like that looks bad means like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, not 3 months, 3+ months. Like the Blazers were 17 and 15, excuse me, the night that sweet Justise got hurt. They're 14 and 23 since. I mean, he's not the reason that they're not good, but he's a reason for sure, because it's so many things you mentioned. The ball handling, right? They just don't have that many dudes who can dribble. They don't have that many gentlemen who can get them organized. Shaedon Sharpe can't do that. Nazir Little can't do that. Like the guys who are going to fill in his minutes, Jabari Walker cannot do that. Obviously the other big guys, like Drew that's not a skill set. Even to some extent, like he was better at it than Josh Hart was when Josh was still around. But Matisse isn't really doing that. They're asking Cam Reddish to do it, and he's better. And so the ball handling, that secondary playmaking, just to like get the ducks in a row type stuff, they really miss from Justise. They also just haven't been able to go small the same way. The small that they wanted to go this year, which was like Justise Winslow, strong as heck. On the opening night of the season, Justise Winslow guarded Domas Sabonis on the block. That's one of the strongest dudes in the league. That's a big ask. They don't have another 6'6" dude who can let them go small and play funky, and then also like go on the other end and like really guard down low. So their flavor of small, like the small ball that they play, is not as good. Justise Winslow is not like the reason that the season has gone this way, but like you said, it's worth circling to say this is the point where it really got murky. Maybe we underappreciated what Justise Winslow meant to the team.
It's funny you mentioned the Kings game and him guarding Sabonis, because that comes up internally here at the station quite a few times, especially with my photographer Corey, who covers a lot of these games for us. And he's like, dude, he was muscling up Sabonis in the paint. He's like, did you know that Winslow was that dude? And I said, nah, man, but that's the kind of player the Blazers need. But yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous about the injuries, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if you they know better than us, right? Like they're privy to the medical information. I will say, talking about the Blazers and medical information, a little dicey this year. Who knows what they know, I guess, or what they'll share with anyone. I know one team feels like they maybe undershared a little bit. I know people are more upset about that than I am. I just think it's like just one of those weird NBA beefs. I'm not too upset about it, but like they know more than us. So I feel like the Blazers are probably their decision will be heavily influenced by what they think his body can do, because like it's the unfortunate part of the NBA. If you can't play, teams can't invest in you. I think Justise Winslow if you got 75 games of Justise Winslow, darn useful bench player. If you get 42, 39, not as good. And that's even with, he was struggling on offense. He could not shoot the ball, but what he does has some value. And I think we've definitely seen it. We've saved the biggest and brightest one for last. Let's talk about Jerami Grant to close the show and what the Blazers should do with his impending free agency. But first, I want to tell my listeners that today's episode, this very episode, is brought to you by BetterHelp. Listen, getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. And therapy can be a way to get to know yourself as you change. Therapy can help if you have a acute traumatic moment and you say, listen, I've experienced a ton of trauma in my life at this moment. I'm going to get into therapy and help. Absolutely, it is a great time to pursue therapy. But just regular everyday life maintenance. Therapy can be the sort of key to making your life easier and better because you can learn more about what you need through regular therapy sessions. If you're thinking about starting therapy, why not give BetterHelp a try? It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Still a pass, first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting here with Orlando Sanchez, KGW here in Portland. What do they do with Jerami Grant?
This is tough, man.
What do they do with him?
Dude, it's gonna be pretty expensive, don't you think? The price?
I mean, they've offered him, according, he told Jason Quick of The Athletic, he's on the record talking about it. It was reported, like sources say, and then Jerami himself said they've offered him the four-year, $112 million max extension, and he has declined to turn it down. You got to think that's where it starts. 4 for 112, which is not a small amount of money. Not a small amount of money. So it's like I don't really know what they do. It's average annual value of 28 million, but like the way NBA contracts work, it'd probably be like 25 and a half, 26 and a half, 28 and a half, 29 and a half. Like that's like typically, that's not exactly how the raises structure work. Like some people who listen to the show know the CBA better than me. So sorry, but like that's roughly what it would be. Average annual value, 28 million. I think that's like the starting point. Is that too much for you from in your eyes?
We're thinking long and hard, that's for sure. But at his position, at his size, what he does, I lean yes. I wish the production was a little bit more. I wish the production was there in timely moments this season when Dame has needed that second guy to step up. But there's no doubt that he's the right fit for this team, the right type of player that you want with the Blazers. So I lean yes on this one.
I think yes is the only answer. Mm-hmm. I think they have backed themselves into a position where they pretty much got to pay Jerami Grant regardless. Listen, if you are a longtime listener to the program, you know that one of the things we try to do here is a little bit of just media literacy. I know that when it was reported that Jerami Grant's max contract he is eligible for is 5 years, $235 million. No one is paying Jerami Grant that money. You do not need to worry about that. That's not happening. No one's giving Jerami Grant $40 million, but the Blazers might have to give him 33. I'm talking average annual value for a contract. That's a lot of money. But if you let him walk, you lost him for nothing. You don't get anything back. You don't get magic cap room. You're not going to have cap space. Jerami Grant doesn't, the way the rest of the salaries work, they're not going to have magical cap space if Jerami Grant walks. They're not going to be able to sign a player of his caliber. So you're basically choosing Jerami Grant or no Jerami Grant. Not Jerami Grant and other stuff. It's just Jerami Grant or no Jerami Grant. And this is like what John Hollander of The Athletic has called the bird rights trap. When you didn't trade him at the trade deadline, you kept him on the team, you have his bird rights, which means you can go over the salary cap to sign him. You are trapped into giving him a fat contract. Shout out to my man, Norman Powell. It just is what it is. Like, they got to do it. You hit on my biggest concern. Jerami Grant, it anecdotally seems like when they've needed him to deliver in the biggest moments, he hasn't been there. There's been nights where it's just like, okay, 8 minutes to go. They're up 6. Dame is getting absolutely mobbed. They need Jerami Grant to make 2 shots. And it feels like he hasn't hit it. I looked this up the other night. Jerami Grant has been really consistent scoring in fourth quarters all year long. It hasn't taken a dip. He has basically stayed right at his he's pretty darn solid between 6 and 8 points all year long in the fourth quarters. His shooting hasn't particularly dipped in the second half of games, but boy, does it feel like boy, does it feel like when the game's on the line, Jerami has had some moments where it's just like, hey, where's JG? Is there, what was there a moment where your opinion changed? Not like you don't have to like pinpoint a moment. I'm not asking you to give me that, but like, were you higher on Jerami Grant earlier in the season?
I was. Yeah. No hesitation. As the year went along, I just think that there are those moments late in the game where it weighs more than what you're actually seeing on the stat sheet. And so and I think part of that is the history of this team going back to the playoffs and the Pelicans, and let's trap Dame, let's blitz him, let's put 3 guys on him and make somebody else beat you. You mentioned, the Al Farouk Aminu days. All of that stuff is stored back here. And so when somebody's open for a corner 3 or someone is open, they need to knock it down in crunch time. And that's part of Jerami's role, especially when Anthony wasn't here, when he was hurt. That more than any becomes his role, and why it's so difficult to be a closer in this league, why it's so difficult to have the ball in your hands when the game's on the line. But those are the ones that are under a microscope. And I think as the year has gone along, there's been a couple of those games where I think back and I say, man, if he would have just hit that shot, I think that it would have turned the game around. Maybe they won it. And at a time when, the West was really tight and really close, you're thinking, if they beat New Orleans, if they beat, insert team that's also in the hunt, it's a different story. If they were in fact going for the playoffs, that is.
They were at one point. They were. I don't think in some ways they still are. They just didn't really commit to it from an organizational standpoint. They may be committed in the other direction. They
see what happens, let's put out these guys and see something special, or here we are.
Or maybe, exactly. Or maybe it goes the other way. Yeah, I think that game in New Orleans, where they ended up losing, Jerami had 28, but he missed 2 shots down the stretch where it's just like, dang. Yeah. If he hits those, you probably win the game. Or at least you have a much better chance of winning the game, right? Like you have a much better chance, and he missed 2 open threes. It's like, yeah, great game. It's hard to fault a dude who had 28. What do you have that night? He was 5 of 9 from 3. So it's like, yeah, I wanted him to go 7 of 9. That is an unfair ask, right? That is I'm not saying that it's reasonable, but it's like those moments he got open shots down the stretch of a game when they were going after Dame, and he misses it. And it's like, all right, well,
sadly, that's what we're going to remember. I mean, you'll look back at the stats and whatnot and say, man, he did have a good game, but those hurt. Those are worth 2 or 3.
Exactly. And I think the stretch you mentioned when Ant was out and Jerami Grant was going to be running the second unit, and the offense just kind of sputtered with him. And it was like, okay, yeah, maybe giving this dude $36 million a year is going to hurt. And I still think it might, but I maintain you have to pay him. The Blazers are not, you can't, this is not a time to talk tough. This is a time to pay the good players you have on your team with their flaws and then try to figure it out.
Man, even the from an optic standpoint of what did you give up to get him?
Yeah,
you're right. I mean,
yeah, they have to. It's like, I think it is a fun debate with people like me and you. It's not our money. And it's never going to be our money. And we can nitpick and say like, oh, I wouldn't do this. That's overpay and all that. And it's like, it's like, whatever. It's not a debate internally. They can't have it. They just have to do it. They have to, they have to sit down with his agent and they have to get his signature on a piece of paper. And then if there's issues down the line, because paying Jerami Grant at 34 years old, something like $38 million, if that's what it ends up being, that's probably going to be bad. that's probably going to be a bad value contract. But that's a problem that the future Blazers will have to they'll have to know that they're signing up for it, because in the immediate term, they can't afford to lose him.
Yeah. And he's a really good player.
That's the key. That's the key, is that he's also good, and they need him and they need his position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely more on the help Damian Lillard timeline. That's for sure.
Yeah. He's not a teenager. He's not a promising teenager. I believe he turned 29 this week. Happy birthday, Jerami Grant. We'll leave it on that. We'll leave it on a happy birthday, right?
Yeah, there
We'll
we
leave it on
go.
that.
Let's
Yeah,
find some joy again, Mike. Let's find some joy.
Listen, I think this summer will be really, really intriguing and fun and interesting for this team. I think the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever we're at, with about 3 weeks left in the season, it's like it could be a slog. It could be a slog. So I am trying to focus the show a little deeper down the horizon, because I do think the offseason is going to be fascinating. I just think that they've got to a point where the regular season is kind of reached bummer territory, and I want less bummers. You know me.
Facts, man. But I do agree with you, and I think this show is going to be pretty money during the offseason. I think you're going to be busy. I've been trying hard not to hype up this offseason, but gosh, does it not feel like it all comes down to this? Like,
they narrowed this road. They are on the narrowest road, where it's like, I was talking with a friend. It's like, kind of feels like June and July of 2023 will define what happens with this, with like the Damian Lillard era, because if it doesn't go the way they need it and want it to go, then the Damian Lillard era will remember of a guy who was a prolific scorer, who didn't always have a roster that fit around him and put up crazy numbers on a team that was kind of meh for a long time. If they get it right, it changes the trajectory so much, and it changes everything you remember about him. Like, it is going to be fascinating. I'm really super excited because it's coming, and guess what? We'll talk about it here. It's what we do 5 days a week. Orlando, thanks so much for joining the program. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Always, man. Thanks for the invite. Always a good time to talk, Mike.
Listeners, come back next week. We'll keep doing it. 5 more episodes. Blazers play a couple games over the weekend, so look for Sunday's show to talk about both of them. Starting with Boston on Friday night. Should be a good one. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.